Welcome to Animorphs Anonymous, the podcast where we casually discuss the Animorphs one book at a time.
I'm Kaycie.
And I'm Alex.
And we're going to talk you through the plot of each book.
But more accurately, take you on tangent trips, factoid forays, and say, well, actually, as much as possible.
Join us on the 1st and the 15th of each month, and we'll take you along on our mission.
And we promise to have you back under the 2-hour time limit.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army.
Okay, let's talk about who wrote this book.
Ellen Giroux's back.
She's back after The Familiar, the book that you hated and I hated so much.
Yep.
How did you feel about this one?
I liked it more than The Familiar, and even more than the last book, but, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. I thought you'd be all over this one.
I don't know. Again.
That's fair. It's fair. Okay. I'll start recapping. We'll figure out how we feel as we go on this journey together. Okay. Tobias is hunting, even though there's a storm coming. He wants to eat before he hunkers down, and he sees a shrew trying to do the same. He folds his wings and dives, catching the shrew and eating it. After he finishes, he hears Taylor's voice echoing in his head, calling him a pathetic bird. And Tobias thinks, the torture doesn't end when you escape, it follows you long after.
Wee!
He's in... Super wee. This thought is interrupted by a helicopter that's flying too close, and it brings him out of his own thought space, and he turns to follow it. He sees ATVs converging and follows them back to where a news broadcast is taking place. Tobias circles in close to hear what the broadcaster is saying, and finds out there's a young boy missing in this woods. And this boy can't hear the rescuers that are calling for him and searching for him because he is deaf. Tobias circles away and decides that this is something he can help with. And he can still hear Taylor's voice mocking him in his head, but he pushes it away. That's chapter 1. It is a strong start.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Wasn't there a mention of, like, he and his uncle used to go paintball shooting?
Yeah. That is in this... It's in the next chapter, because the storm, like, kind of... No. It's you're right there. It happens, like, right now. But he's flying around searching for the kid, and the rain starts to fall and pelt him, and he says it doesn't feel good. It feels like being hit with paintballs, because he and his uncle went one time.
So, do you remember, like, way back in, like, I don't know, it was, like, the teens, where Tobias mentioned something about, like, how to shoot a gun? And I was like, oh, that's a weird thing for him to know.
Yeah.
So I like to think that this is a continuation of that, and I appreciated it.
I like that. I like that a lot. I'm
okay
glad that you remembered that detail that I totally forgot about. Yeah, I was kind of this kind of I went a different direction with this because I was thinking of him and his uncle paintballing, and instead of like, oh look, here's a memory where they did a thing together and Tobias remembers it, I was more like, his uncle probably just took him out there so he could like fucking shoot him in the face with paintballs.
Whoa! Oh no!
That's terrible. But that's what I thought.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
They were not on the same team. Or maybe
No,
they were and
I
you just
was
shot
like-
him in the face.
Yeah, he's like, fuck it, I want to shoot this fucking idiot kid. Some stress release for me. I don't know. I just thought he was a mean dude.
He's a mean dude.
Anyways, yes. So Tobias is searching, the rain starts to fall, and it pelts him. And he's circling around looking as the rain starts to get harder and harder. And then the lightning starts. And suddenly Tobias catches a flash of red and then a footprint. And he's able to follow it over to a sinkhole where he sees Bobby. Bobby's huddled at the bottom of the sinkhole, and Tobias starts thought speaking to him, saying, it'll be okay. And then Tobias realizes, like, I don't really have a good morph for grabbing a kid out of a sinkhole and, like, lifting him out. Because, you know, even a hork-bajir, he's afraid he'll, like, cut the kid to shreds. So instead, he flies back to where everybody's gathered, and he sees a man who looks like he could really use a miracle. And he has this name tag on, which reads McIntyre, which is the little boy's last name. So we make the assumption that that's his dad. And the ink is running down his chest in the heavy rain. Tobias lands in front of him and says, "I'll lead you to Bobby." And the guy doesn't question Tobias for a minute. He wants to find his son. He doesn't care how it happens.
Aww.
It's adorable. So the guy gets a few rangers to follow him, and Tobias' private thought speaks to the dad only and leads them all the way over to where Bobby is. And when they find him, the park rangers work to pull Bobby out of the sinkhole because it's rapidly filling with water and it's already at his knees. And as soon as they get Bobby out, he and his dad hug and they hold each other really close. And the sight of them together fills Tobias with some sort of emotion. And he lets it out in an aerial display with dives and loops and impressive feats until suddenly, wham, a golden eagle hits him and he didn't even see it coming.
David! No.
What a twist!
I'm back, bitches!
Oh, man.
Oh,
that would be the fucking worst.
I know. Instead, a different terrible person is back.
Yeah. Yeah, which is worse?
Oh, I mean, David's worse. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate David so much more.
Yeah, the betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
Just, ew, David.
I'm so glad somebody posted that in the Facebook group. Delighted me.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so Tobias woke up in a university center with two vets looking at him. He had a useless wing and an injured neck, and the vets were calling him Superbird, and he's like, "What the fuck is this?" They answered him right away as they were shoving a newspaper article to each other, which read that a talking bird led searchers to Bobby. And
Ugh.
Tobias is like, "Oh, I fucked up. I fucked up real hard." And he's like, in trying to quiet the voice of Taylor in his head, he had announced to the Yerks that he was there and he put himself and his friends in danger. That's when the vets... Yeah.
I wish they hadn't been, like, passing a newspaper back and forth. I wish they would have just had, like, the TV on and there was a news story about it. Like, the paper's a little too, like, planted, I think. Just a critique.
Yeah, TV would have made a lot more sense, huh?
I don't know.
Oh, well. So anyways, the vets start packing up to leave for the night, and Tobias is like, "Oh no, they're going home." And he still doesn't think he can morph because the lab is being recorded, there's security cameras in there, and now he's going to be alone all night. And then he goes to sleep. And we cut to the next chapter.
It's
which
too
makes
bad
sense.
he doesn't have a similar bird morph, like, similar in size, because maybe the cameras wouldn't pick up on that necessarily.
I mean, he could, like, go to, like, seagull and then back.
Yeah. Or owl or something.
Ooh, owl would be better because that's closer in color.
Yeah, because then he could just, like, turn and face a corner of the cage and then just, like, morph real quick and then morph back.
Uh-huh.
Why didn't you think of this, Tobias?
He was busy. I mean, even so, like, that would heal his injuries, but he, like, couldn't get out, so...
But, yeah. But heal.
Like, he could heal, yeah, which would be even weirder. Because his wing is, like, broken.
But then the vets would get to back the next morning and be like, "Oh, he's all healed. Okay, goodbye," and then release him, right?
He really is a super bird. We should definitely kill him and examine his body for science.
Okay,
the fountain
sure.
of youth is here.
Fair enough.
I mean, it could go correctly or incorrectly in any number of ways.
Yes.
He would be out of pain would be the advantage.
Yay! Boy's been through enough.
Yeah, he has. He definitely... Although I think they gave him pain medication, they said. So, who knows?
Drugs!
Drugs? Do you want some drugs? Okay. Anyway. So, Tobias is woken by a loud screech at 1:12 a.m. There's a flash of light as a Draken beam sliced through the door. Once they burst in, 2 quick shots disabled the cameras, and a hork-bajir came running up to grab Tobias, who was trying to cover his reddish tail in the corner of his cage. A hork-bajir grabbed the cage and said aloud, "The visitor will praise me." And Tobias is like, "You haven't been around here long, have you? The visitor's not going to praise anybody.
You must be new.
You must be new on Earth. Let me tell you." So, the hork-bajir runs into the hallway carrying this cage, and he was stopped by some human controllers with Draken beams. They declared, "We're the rebels, hand over the bird." And the hork-bajir turned to run... Ooh.
What?
Gax, what are you doing? Sorry. Hey. Gax is having a fit.
No.
Anyways, he heard there were birds in danger, and he was like, "No, this is distressing to me."
Oh, no. I thought he stopped having fits.
He did. I think he's just having one because I'm talking. So the hork-bajir ran into the hallway. He was stopped by some human controllers with Draken beams. They declared that they were rebels and to hand over the bird. And the hork-bajir turned to run around another way and ran into yet another group of people. There was a huge standoff where the hork-bajir is just holding Tobias's cage and like, what the fuck do I do now? And he got desperate. He jumped at the smallest member of the team, but then a second later, everybody else started jumping the hork-bajir. Tobias's cage got kind of crushed and then went skittering across the floor and wedged under a sink. The cage was pressing up against him because it's all deformed and crushed now, and he couldn't really see much from where he was, but he could hear fighting until he saw a very familiar set of feet. They were bare feet.
Bare feet!
And Rachel picked up his cage and was like, "The cavalry has arrived."
Yay!
Yes.
Your girlfriend is saving you.
She's here. Finally.
She's here to
I don't
kick
know why I
ass
said
and...
finally.
I don't know. What else do bears do? Eat honey? Wave with
There
their
was
little
that bear in
paws?
Russia that ate like 40 pounds of cocaine that they dumped off a plane.
Holy shit, is it okay?
No, he died.
Oh no! Oh no! Why would it eat so much cocaine?
I don't know. Like, what possessed him to eat the cocaine in the first place, and why did he continue?
Oh my god. I mean, I know cocaine's addictive, but like...
Not like instantly.
That. Yeah.
Not like that.
Geez.
That was a choice that Russian bear made.
God. Well, that's a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Fuck. Anyway.
So, Rachel tells Marco to grab Tobias's cage because Marco has opposable thumbs because he's a gorilla. And Marco reaches for him, but as he's about to grab the cage, a hork-bajir grabs Marco's ankle and pulls him away. And Rachel's kind of like, "Well, I'll do my best." And so she kind of like pushes his cage along as best she can with her like bear claws. And she ends up bumping into a pair of human feet. And there's this very menacing scene where Tobias can't see whose face it is. But like as he looks up, he can see like the familiar looking legs or whatever. And then the face covered in shadow. And then a Draken beam is leveled at Rachel. And he notices the shimmer of the artificial hand. And he's like, "It's Taylor."
Ugh.
Who threatens to shoot Rachel, and then immediately shoots Rachel.
She threatened, and then she carried through with the threat.
She immediately carried through. That's what I like about Taylor, is that she doesn't, she doesn't let it sit. She's like, "I'm going to shoot you," and you're like, "Oh no, don't do that, here's why." Taylor doesn't wait. You'll be like, "Oh no," and she'll be like, "Pew pew," and it's like, oh,
Is she
okay then.
Is she supposed to be like the anti-Rachel or something?
I think so.
There's just a lot of like, not weird comparisons, but I don't know. There was just a feeling throughout this book.
Well, that's like even in the last book, the whole time his comparisons are all like, she is this like Rachel, but not at all like Rachel.
Yeah.
And here's how you're not like Rachel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
She's definitely supposed to be like dark Rachel that haunts Tobias's waking moments.
Whoa!
Sorry. Yeah, that's Taylor. She immediately shoots Rachel right in the flank and takes her down. And then Taylor does her, like, stupid fucking weapon thing where she, like, reaches her artificial hand into Tobias's cage and shoots that gas in there, and he, like, in a super desperate move, reaches out his talon and wraps it around her actual hand, not her artificial hand, and starts acquiring her. And they hold each other in this weird transfer moment before the gas takes effect and Tobias just passes the fuck out. And the last thing he hears is Taylor going, "It's a new and improved formula."
God.
Yeah. Which I'm sure is the exact tone she said it in as he passed out.
Just, oh God. She's like Billy Mays. It's a new and improved formula! Let me show you!
Oh, God. Yeah. Once again, bringing our cocaine commentary full circle.
Did he do cocaine?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's, like, part of why he died.
He died?
Like, his heart...
Oh my God.
Did you not know Billy Mays died? This was, a decade ago.
I probably did. Oh.
This was, like, when we were in college. He had a heart attack on an airplane.
Oh, yeah.
And there was some talk about, like, oh, he bumped his head. Or God, I hope I'm remembering who Billy Mays is correctly.
The infomercial guy who yelled a lot.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Okay.
That did the OxyClean.
Yeah.
The original OxyClean guy, right? Yeah. Yeah, he died on, I believe, on an airplane, and what contributed to his heart failure was his taking of cocaine.
Well,
I'm glad that we could talk about Billy Mays' death together on this podcast. This has gone a very dark place.
This is an interesting start that we've had, I think. Again, we're talking about
on the scale of 1 to 10, how's this podcast going for you so far?
God. It's just so much cocaine.
I could tell you more as we go on, just kind of pepper in the cocaine commentary as we go. Oh, God. Anyways.
Fucking Taylor's back.
Taylor's back. Back again.
Taylor's back. Tell a friend.
That's right. I'm telling you. You're my friend I'm telling. I don't know why this has turned into, like, the Perdcast now. Like...
You heard with Perd.
Okay.
Okay, so Taylor's back. She's being rude. She shot Rachel.
Yes. Tobias wakes up to the harsh sounds of metal grating on metal. The first thing he notices is Drakenbeam strapped with hardware from the tool store. And it's all strapped around his cage, pointing at him. And I'm just imagining it like a bunch of those, like, spring clamp clips.
Yeah.
Just Drakenbeam, but, like, no way to fire them. She just, like, clamped him down. That's not how this is set up at all. They will automatically fire as Taylor clears up very soon if he thinks about morphing at all.
Somehow.
That's the deal. Right. But in my head, these were just handheld guns that were clamped to boards around his cage with no way to fire them.
God.
Which I thought was very funny.
Yes.
But this is not funny. She has all the guns trained on him, and she starts, like, immediately starts saying stuff like, I want you to think of death as an option to you right now. Because, of course, Tobias is immediately like, oh, I could morph. There is a way out. Death is a way out. And Taylor's like, yes, I did want death to be an option to you. I'm glad you thought of that. And then she continues to say, but I'd rather you stay alive because I need your help. And then she's, like, going on about, like, the Yeerks are divided. Many of them are sick of the Visors and the Council and everything, and they want out. They're tired of being in the system that they're stuck in, and we think that the Andalite Bandalites know how to help us. And Tobias, like, after listening to this weird tirade, finally responds to her, and, like, then she just immediately launches into, like, I could break you in seconds. I know exactly how far to push you and what to say. I could destroy you. But I need you, so I'm not gonna. And then she gives him a piece of paper with a URL on it, and she's like, leave a comment on my Patreon. Like, F for sympathy. I don't know. What do the kids do these days?
Oh my god.
Do you know how pissed I would be if somebody gave me a paper with a URL that I had to type out? Like, email it to me, you goddamn bitch!
Oh my god.
Anyways, she gives him URL on a piece of paper like a fucking heathen, and then opens the door of his cage and opens the window and just leaves.
And she left her dirty fucking dishes in the sink.
She left her dishes in the sink. That's what the metal scraping was like a fork on the bottom of a tin can, and then she left all her shit in the sink. Like, what? What are you doing? Like, who eats soup during a fucking torture session?
I don't even know.
It's probably the worst part. Like, if you're gonna torture me, at least eat your soup in private.
At least eat something intimidating. Like, eat, like, I don't know, like a piece of chicken or something. Like, do a Denethor, you know, and he's, like, eating the fucking, like, red berries and, like, the, you know, the red juice is, like, spilling over his mouth as his son rides to his fucking death in the fields of Pelennor or whatever. Like, like, make it visually, like, coordinated. Come on.
I'm just trying to think of more threatening foods. Like a hamburger, double-fisted. Chocolate cake. No one's gonna fuck with you if you're eating that chocolate cake.
Oh my god.
Once you explained it, it made more sense, but when you first said it, I was like, what foods are classified as threatening?
Just eat like fucking
dragon fruit.
Eat like fucking raw chicken. Because then it's like, ooh, I could eat you because I'm fucking crazy. I don't know.
What about 12 raw eggs? Is that intimidating?
Oh my god.
I will eat your unborn children.
God.
This is so much, but I agree that soup is like one of the least threatening foods. Like, grandmas eat soup. You can't fucking fool me.
I'm picturing it being like Campbell's too, which is like
definitely
weak soup, you know?
With like the little like round noodle things in it.
And the tiny cubes of chicken.
Yeah, that you have to add a can of water to because it's too concentrated. Maybe that was like her flex, was that it was concentrated soup, but she didn't add water, and she was just hoping that he noticed the whole time, but he never did.
It's like tearing up in a ramen flavor packet and just eating the powder.
This is chicken flavor. Oh, fuck. That was shrimp.
Oh, no.
What's more, like, see, that is the least threatening way you can eat ramen, because I think the threatening way would be to open the packet and take a chunk of the raw noodles and bite that. Like, that's, so, like, you really fuck it up when you're like, look at this powder packet. I'm gonna fucking down this shit.
You snort it.
Oh, and then you get that chicken high.
Yeah. Go back to the cocaine thing. Wow. All right. What a weird podcast.
Yeah, this has gone very awry.
Shit.
Okay.
So
the
other dumb thing that happened. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, tell me.
Was that she came to some sort of conclusion that he was an Andalite that magically had the power to stay in morph for longer than 2 hours, which I feel is a really dumb conclusion to come to.
Yeah, and his only excuse is, well, we have scientists too.
Science! Yeah, it was...
Science!
I was like, wouldn't she realize by now that he's a Nothlit? Like the time that she took him from the... I almost said the dentist's office. I'm a little bit tipsy. You know? The vet's office.
Birds don't even have teeth, Kaycie.
I know that. Oh, no.
Sorry, I just started thinking about threatening foods again. Anyways, Tobias hops out onto the edge of the window and falls, basically, with his injured wing and body, and just kind of like blurps onto the ground. And
he did a barrel roll.
Then he did a barrel roll and just kind of like... and then he drags himself under a tree. He morphs, he demorphs, he gets rid of the damage, and he's like, cool, I'm good. So once he's flying capable again, he takes off towards Rachel's house. And he's like, I need my friends immediately. Partway there, he realized Taylor could have put a tracker on him, so he lands on a random roof, goes to flee, expecting some sort of thing to burst out of his body. And when it doesn't happen, he's like, further proof what Taylor said was true. No. And so he tears off towards Rachel's again. Yeah, no is correct. He flies right through her open window where she's inexplicably sleeping, and he lands on her headboard, wakes her up, and she's like, oh my god, I'm so glad you're alive. And they have like a quick moment where they catch up, and she like gently touches him, which I imagine is very awkward because I just imagine her like, I don't know where to put my hand, and like then just kind of like patting his head like,
yes, spinning his little head.
Yeah, just like, good job.
Good boy.
Good boy. Welcome back. Anyways, after a quick catch up, Tobias tells her all about Taylor's plan to like go in and do this URL thing, and they're like, we need to talk to the rest of the team. So they call everybody out to the barn. Tobias relays this thing to everybody, and at first they're all like, ooh, this is not, like, this doesn't smell right. This is very wrong. But then they're like, it also is like a really unique opportunity. So they're all slowly getting on board, and Axe is the one who at first was like, it's a yerk, we can't trust her, nope. And then he's like, but if there is like some sort of resistance, this is pretty great. We could cause a lot of infighting. So they're like, okay, like, let's consider it. And after everybody has their fair say, Jake's like, well, Tobias, it's your decision. And Tobias is like, let's do it. And that's that chapter.
Whee!
Yes. This is the best part of maybe the entire book.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
It's delightful. So the kids all head out in the middle of the night into Axe's scoop, where he has jury-rigged up a computer to the internet using a lot of parts from shit that he found and Cassie's cell phone that her dad said she could talk on for 30 minutes a week if she does Saturday morning chores.
Wow.
They go to the right? They go to the URL that Taylor gave them, and Axe tells an excellent joke after he types in Earth is Saurus instead of Earth is ours. And he goes, I guess 7 fingers isn't always better. And that's great.
Oh my god.
It's fucking great.
And he also makes a mention of computer renaissance, which I completely forgot was a thing.
I don't even know what that is.
Do you remember computer renaissance?
No, I don't know what it is.
I feel like it was like a chain store. Yeah, maybe it was just an American. But yeah, it was like a computer chain store, which I appreciated.
I appreciate that.
And also some explanation as to how Axe is getting power to his little area is that he has a generator that he hasn't plugged into anything. Maybe he rigged up a solar panel?
He probably just, like, steals gasoline. It's like a loud gas-powered generator.
He just, like, runs up to cars and just, like, siphons the gas.
Like, cut to a scene of fully not human. He's definitely Andalite when this happens, going up to, like, RVs and, like, doing that thing where you take the hose and, like, stick it in the gas tank and, like, suck it with your mouth. Oh, shit. Except he needs a mouth, so he'd have to go human.
Yeah.
And then, like, pours it.
Yeah.
And then runs away when they're like, hey, what are you doing? I need your gasoline. Oh, lean.
Or
as he's running.
Yeah.
Oh. As he runs away with his arms all like akimbo because he doesn't really have control. He's like, I'm going to fall at any moment.
God, I love him.
Me too. And this isn't even there's like a whole other thing too.
Okay.
So they send off their comment to the website that Taylor made. And they're just supposed to leave a comment. So they're like, we'll play, signed, the Bandits. And then the kids hang out for a while waiting for a response. And they're playing Solitaire and Snake. And Axe is, like, wasting these motherfuckers at Snake.
Oh, my God. I loved that. And then...
Isn't that great?
It was so good. And then earlier Marco was like, oh, there's a new James Bond trailer. Like, Jake, click on it. And I was like, Marco, that shit would take, like, 2 hours to load.
Okay, I didn't write that down, but I loved how, like, he was like, Axe, click on Axe, this is important. Axe, come on, it's important.
And Axe was just like,
really, like, Axe was like, earthosaurus.com, and he's like, come on, James Bond is really important. Oh, I loved that so much.
Yeah.
I loved this entire scene.
Yeah, it was...
It's so good.
And now they're just playing Minesweeper in the woods in the early hours of the morning.
Exactly. And Axe is laying waste to them. So good. They don't have to wait long, though, because Taylor responds within a half hour, and she goes, "Don't waste any time. Let's meet in a public location, the borders in the wildlife section, because it's thematically appropriate." And she literally says that.
Oh, my God.
Oh, man. And they're trying to figure out, like, okay, who is going to meet her, and, like, what are we going to do? Because they can't go as themselves. They don't want their human likenesses to be associated with anything here. And finally, it's Tobias that figures out the exact right morph. And so he's like, I'm going to go see Taylor as Taylor.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
I like how Marco was like, X can't go because he attracts too many girls. I also can't go for the same reason.
I, too, attract too many women.
Oh my God, that was such a good line.
Marco was fucking on point in this book.
He was.
All the good jokes. So, they meet up at this Borders the next day, and Tobias surprises Taylor, and when she, like, turns around, there's a moment of, like, kind of like, oh, on her face, because she's like, that's clever. I see my own unblemished, perfect image. And she asks if being able to acquire Welland Morph is a new upgrade, because remember, Tobias acquired her as a hawk,
right.
And she figured that out.
Right.
And Tobias is like, we know science.
That's just his answer for everything.
Yeah, he's basically just like, science is the reason. Which I appreciate. That's going to be my excuse. I've used for science as an excuse before, so...
Yep.
So Taylor and Taylor walk up to the counter to order their drinks in the cafe of the Borders, and they send the barista reeling. He does not know what to do with these two hot twins. So they order their drinks, and, like, Taylor, the original, orders, like, some sort of healthy thing, and Tobias is like, I'll take coffee and sugar and cream and whipped cream. And Taylor's like, how the fuck could you do this to my perfect body? What are you doing? And Tobias is like, fuck it, I'm having whatever I want today. So once they sit down with their drinks, Taylor starts going over the plan. There's a gas pipeline half a mile away from the Yerk pool, and they plan on digging a tunnel to connect that gas line area into the Yerk pool. They're going to fill up the pool with gases and create a huge explosion. And apparently it's going to be controlled somehow by Taylor's people who are on it. I'm saying all of this in quotations. And they're just going to use it to take control of the pool, because if you control when the Yerks feed, then you control everything. And Taylor's like, I've done the calculations. We have people working on it. It's not going to destroy the city above. And Tobias, again, just accepts this. And then they're like, she's like, oh, I also know what morph is going to do the job, because Tobias is like, there's no earth creature that can dig this giant fucking tunnel. She's like, no, but there are taxin. And that is the end of that chapter.
What happened to the portable Kandrona thing that they were talking about?
Oh, they lightly beat up the factory, the Dunkin' Donuts factory where they were, so the Yerks were like, well, 14 units fell on the ground. This plan's done.
Yeah, exactly.
God. Was that the fucking Helmacron book that was in?
Yes, it was. Or no, was it?
It was. I remember because Rachel was talking about their polyester uniforms.
Okay.
Sorry. Anyways, we cut to the food court for another excellent food court scene where the kids have met up to discuss what Taylor offered. And Tobias is the one that has to explain her plan, and so he kind of becomes like a de facto defender of her plan as well. And they're having a kind of round table here about her intentions. And everybody is shocked that she expects them to go taxin. And Marco starts grilling Tobias, like, why Taylor isn't using actual taxin to do this job. And Tobias is, like, kind of giving up, like, half-assed, like, well, they don't actually have taxin in the Resistance because, like, you don't want an ally that would sell you out for a rotten piece of meat. And Marco goes, I don't know if a child that got a B- in gym can control a taxin. And Rachel's like, you got a B- in gym? And that's a most excellent interaction. So,
but it was so random. I was like, why would you bring that up now?
It's gotta just be eating away at him, and like every waking moment he's like, how did I get a B- in gym?
He was just looking for the right opportunity to slip it in and complain about it.
Exactly.
I appreciate
I run for my life all the time. How am I not fit?
Okay, I appreciate that.
I liked it. I just like that they're still worried about grades.
Yeah.
Like, you're fucked. Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Jake takes this moment to leave to get them all food. Like, a lot of food. Like,
with what money?
I don't know. Like, they've all pooled their allowance to buy, like, 18 hamburgers and nachos and hot dogs and chips and, like, just, like, a fucking lot of food.
I think my son, Axe, was very contained in this scene, and I'm very proud of him.
I think it was because he was torn between looking through his bag of electronics that he had just bought, which is a point that is never brought up again, and we don't know what he bought, and eating nachos. He was, like, in his own little world.
Aww.
Anyways, right when Jake gets back with all this food, Rachel, like, grabs a burger, takes a bite of it, and then she's like, just so you know, I'm in for this plan, by the way. I'm doing it. And Axe is like, yeah, you know what? I'm in, too. And Marco just goes, like, how do we communicate back to Taylor, though? And Tobias is like, we don't. We just, like, show up and do this, or we don't. And the whole time that they're having this discussion, Tobias gets this, like, overarching feeling of, like, all of his friends are withholding, not withholding information from him, but, like, holding back and not kind of being as bantery as they could be with him because of the sensitivity of the subject of Taylor. So, like, they're all really humoring him in all of what he's saying here.
Oh. I don't like that.
I don't like that either. He mentions it, like, just once or twice, but, like, he does mention that they are all kind of, like, when Marco could have come back with, like, a comment, he would kind of stop himself and not say something mean because, like, Taylor and Tobias are not a good mix.
Yeah.
So, it's at this point, Cassie has an outburst.
Yes.
She, like, I don't even know. She, like, stood up, and it draws the attention of the people next to them, and she's like, how can we do this? How can any of you do this? How can you think this is a good plan? And Jake just, like, puts a hand on her shoulder and, like, guides her back down to sitting, like, okay, it'll be okay. And Cassie's like, how can we be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of people, and not that any of you care, but thousands of Yeerks, some of them are allies? And Axe points out, like, this statement is incongruous with your past behaviors. And Cassie's like, the self-defense, it's fine. It's self-defense, right? That's a thing. And, like, she kind of is trailing off here. Like, she's kind of arguing with herself. Like, I had to. It's right. It's the right thing. Can't you see? Don't you get it? And no one's seeing her point, so she goes to Jake and says, what about Mr. Tidwell? We owe telling him that this is going to happen. And Axe is like, we owe them nothing except maybe a warning. And Cassie's like, that's bullshit. And Jake, what are you going to do if Tom is there? And Jake's like, we're just going to have to accept Tom's death. And Cassie's like, that's completely fucking nuts. And then somebody else points out that the Yeerks are inherently not innocent because of infesting people, and Cassie tries to argue that some of them feel like they have to because they'll be eliminated if they don't infest people and, like, be part of this thing. Mm-hmm. And they argue back, like, hey, this isn't like bombing innocent people. And then Tobias looks around at all the people at the mall enjoying their Saturday and thinks, isn't it? Yeah, this moral quandary.
I mean, I was a little bit bothered by Axe's whole demeanor during this, because he's, like, talking about this mission like it's some kind of, like, cool, harmless opportunity to see something neat. Mm-hmm. He's all like, oh, it's an interesting opportunity. I think we should pursue it. Like, he's so casual about it, and then I was like, do you not comprehend? But, like, you know, it's Axe. He's more logic than emotion, and that makes sense for him. But I was also just like,
He is, but I also think, like, part of it is that Axe, I don't think ever considered that, especially because of like how propaganda-y the Andalite homeworld is, I don't think it ever occurred to him that there could be infighting within the Yeerks. Like, this is a totally new concept to him, and he's like, holy shit, if we can have them fight with each other, and then we have to do less shit because they're fighting with each other, that's great. Like, we gotta do this.
Sure.
So I could totally see why he would be, like, more willing to, like, let's push it a little further because, like, this could be really great.
Yeah. Especially coming off the Helmicron book, where that was a big... Right? Or was that the first Helmicron book? No, that was more the first Helmicron book. Getting them to fight each other.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, that was the solution to the end of the first book, but it was a big plot point in the second book that then just disappeared and poofed into space and never came back.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up the Helmicrons.
It's my trigger word.
It's a sensitive subject.
That's like, if I ever am taken over by something and I die and my body's being used, my sleeper cell word that will bring me back online to murder everybody around me is Helmicrons.
Okay.
So wherever in that specific situation, I just want you to know that.
Oh, boy.
Oh, God. We've talked about a lot of shit I never thought... There's words coming out of my mouth I never thought would come out in the order that they have in this recording.
Whew. I don't even know what's happening.
Me either. Let's talk about Cassie, who does know what's happening. She has very strong feelings about what's happening.
Yes.
So Cassie backs out of this mission. She's not going to do it. And Tobias admires her. He's like, wow, I wish I could do that, but I gotta go because Taylor's there, and if I'm not there to watch Taylor, then who's gonna watch Taylor? As if nobody else is capable of it. And in fact, he's the worst choice for it.
I don't know. Does he feel some responsibility for her, though, since he is kind of the ambassador between the two parties? Okay,
so here's where I thought that I might... I'm just going to say right up front, I'm very out of my depth here. But this is where I thought maybe I want to start doing some research, because to me, this whole feeling responsibility for her, feeling like he has to be the one to watch her, strikes me as like this is some sort of like PTSD. This is some sort of reaction to the torture. This is this is something in his own head that's not quite right because of what happened to him.
Yeah.
And I meant to, but then didn't want, I wanted to look up like what this kind of mechanism is in some sort of psychology term, because it really feels like it might have been researched and like this might actually be like, there might be something to this in real life.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
I don't know.
Just also aside from the fact that he's technically spent the most time with her. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like, even during his torture scene, he was resisting her and trying to, you know, combat her, even in some ways, to, like, get inside her head a little bit. So,
yeah.
Do you think it's more than just the fact that he's had the most exposure to her?
Yeah, I definitely think it's more. And I think, like, it might even be, like, a little bit of, like, a Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Like, he feels like he has to be with, not like in a way that's like, oh, they're nicer to us than the cops, so we like them more, but like, I have to be there with her because it's my person that I'm responsible for, even though I hate them or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something to that.
Damn!
Yeah. I'll just lay out my opinion here. Like, this was a total fucking turnaround from The Familiar. I thought this was, like, one of the stronger books that we've read recently. Mm-hmm. Not including Megamorphs 4. Like, in the main series. This is one of the stronger books that we've read.
Yeah, recently. I would agree with that.
Anyways. Okay, so Tobias has his whole thing about Taylor. And then Tobias and Axe, they're scouting out this station where the meetup is going to take place. It's, like, a pumping station, and it's under construction, so, like... It got partially finished, and then the community that was surrounding it didn't want a lot of traffic, so they decided to halt the construction, have some sort of meetings about it, and, like, make sure it was all copacetic. And So, like, they have the station set up, but the roads are just packed gravel. They're not paved. And they have a sewer system there. They have some electricity, but they don't really have any the other buildings done or completed or enclosed or anything like that. So that's what we're dealing with here. That's what they're scouting out. They're flying around. Tobias is himself, and Axe is morphed to Owl before they land and start morphing, demorphing both to Andalite. Axe then cuts fur off of Tobias's chest in a manner called Unschweet, which is supposed to be a shaming thing. And Tobias asks Axe, "Are you shaming me for something?" And Axe is like, "No, I'm not, but, like, we just couldn't be twins. Sorry, my bad."
This is the only way I know how to cut fur.
Yeah.
He's like, oh.
That was his excuse.
His many-fingered hands would not handle a scissors well.
No, but, like, you shouldn't... Okay, here's a really cool thing that I'm going to totally derail to talk about for a little bit.
Good.
So, like, in the US, UK, blah, 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 when you're clipping horses, like, most of the time you use, like, clippers, like, electric, like, you know, electric, like, you shave your face with. But there's this page I follow that has horses in Egypt, and, like, one of the things they do, they actually have guys that, like, come around and clip, and they're, like, big fucking shears. Like, huge scissor shears. It's really cool, and they can do all sorts of, like... They do cool patterns on, like, camels and stuff for holidays and so on. So, like, they'll do, like, all these, like, really intricate fur designs. But, like, they're actual giant scissor things. It's so cool.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think they should cut stars into Tobias's butt.
Oh, like a cutie mark.
Yes.
Oh.
And then we can put glitter hooves on him, which are actual stickers you can put on horse hooves, so we can have him have glittery pink hooves.
Give him a glow up.
Oh, God. Aw.
I love it.
Decorate our Andalite for Christmas.
Cute.
Okay. More words I thought I would never say.
Getting into the Christmas spirit.
I guess. This episode's going to come out at the end of January, but okay.
Well, yeah.
Maybe February.
What is time?
I don't know. Who cares what time is anymore? I don't fucking know. Okay, so anyways, the two of them start creeping around because they don't want to be in, like, the big lighted area, so they're kind of, like, going around the outside of this. And as they approach the point where they're supposed to meet up with Taylor, she steps out of the shadows, dressed up in this weird black dominatrix suit. And, like, Tobias is like, how did we not spot her before? How did she appear from the shadows like the person of my nightmares? And then Taylor's like, come with me. I've got an especially big, mean Taxon for you to acquire. And then she leads them into an underground place where there's machinery everywhere that's screaming and whining and hurting their ears, and leads them to this handle in the floor. And Tobias tries to, like, lift up this, like, grate thing in the floor, and Axe goes, allow me to help you. And it takes the two of them to lift this thing up because their arms are so weak.
Oh, they need to lift.
I know, but this leads to one of my favorite comebacks later in the book. Anyways, I'll get to it eventually. So they try to lift it. When they do, there's this snort from below them that causes them both to jump back. And Taylor tries to mock them. And she's kind of like, oh, you're scared? And Axe goes, we're not scared. We are just being cautious. And, like, he's very legitimately serious about that. Like, no, factually, we're not scared. Factually, we're being cautious.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. So, there's no sign of the Taxon, and Axe says as much, and Taylor goes, well, then go in and get it, silly, which made me just want to punch her in the fucking throat.
God.
Who says shit like that? Go in the dark cavern and get the Taxon, silly. Fuck you. Sorry. Whew. So, Axe puts on a very brave show. He jumps right down into this dark pit. And then he, like, talks to Tobias privately, and he's like, bend your knees upon impact so you don't get hurt. And so Tobias tries to jump down there and just, like, wha-bam onto the floor. Because he's not good at this. And then he has this moment of panic where he's like, what if she traps us in here in this holding tank thing? And he like, thinks, like, oh, yeah, all my friends are waiting out to rescue us. And between Axe and I, we could probably, like, morph stuff to get us out of here. But it doesn't stop him from, like, panicking. He's trying to override with logic, but he's not really there. And so they continue the search for this Taxon. They can't see anything in this underground bunker thing. And Axe, like, takes a few steps forward, and Tobias loses sight of him almost completely because it's so dark. And then he sees, like, kind of movement off to his right, and he's like, Axe, is that you? And kind of, like, reaches out. And then there's this tearing, shooting pain up his arm because he has stuck his arm right into the Taxon's mouth, and it's grinding down his Andalite arm into nothing.
Gross.
Yeah. And Tobias lets out a scream as he's being sucked towards the Taxon's mouth, and Axe leaps into his rescue and just, like, whap, hits the Taxon with his tail blade. And then he goes, Tobias, we need to acquire this animal quickly. I think I've mortally wounded him. And so Tobias demorphs, and Axe is already starting to acquire him while Tobias is demorphing. And then it's Tobias's turn. And as soon as he touches the Taxon and starts absorbing the DNA, he swears that he can feel this force within him raging and just screaming. And he's like, maybe it's my tortured mind, or maybe it really is the DNA of the Taxon raging inside of me. And then, with a shudder, the Taxon dies.
Yay!
The next morning, the kids all meet up at this pumping station again. It's an industrial park that is under construction, like we said before. And Tobias is the last one to arrive because he had an unfortunate incident with trying to catch breakfast, which leads to another great conversation. So Marco's like, what happened? Couldn't get anything to eat. And he's like trying to like give Tobias shit. But Tobias is like, you know, man, it must be like really hard for you to get breakfast every morning because you got to like put a Pop-Tart in the toaster.
Sick burn.
It was a sick burn. And then like we cut to Jake changed the plan on Taylor last minute to try and mitigate some risk. He left a message for her saying like, don't show up to the site before 8 a.m. And she agreed to his terms, and they had surveillance going for a while. And they said they thought she stuck to her word. They couldn't see anything about, like, you know, they couldn't find any evidence of her being around. Tobias felt really uneasy that she had agreed to those terms because now he's like, oh, she has something in mind. And then that's when Rachel notices his injury where he got bit by the squirrel that he was trying to catch earlier that day and asks him about it. And he's like, yeah, it's just breakfast bites back. And then Marco goes, I, too, had an unfortunate breakfast injury on the way here. I was looking in the toaster at my Pop-Tart and it popped up and hit me right in the eye. And, like, nobody acknowledges this great thing that Marco just said.
Marco!
Like, nobody says anything to him. And I appreciate it. Oh, God, I loved it so much.
I love Marco.
He's so good in this book.
He's a good boy in this book.
He's such a good boy. He had a Pop-Tart to the eye. He probably only made it because he morphed out of the injuries, the catastrophic injuries that he had.
Oh my God. He would totally do that. Nuts.
He 1,000% would do that. And then Cassie's there, and we find out that she's only shown up to see off her friends. And, like, that was it. And then she's leaving. And it's really
weird.
awkward.
Yeah. It's really weird. I mean,
it's super weird.
Part of me is like, oh, she says she's not going on the mission, but she's going to, like, end up saving them or whatever. But it's weird that she chose not to go, like, this late in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can see her doing this, like, earlier on in the series, but, like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like, Tobias does make, like, a pretty big point of mentioning that Jake always gives them the option to sit out the mission. It's just they never really take it.
Yeah. It's like,
know.
at this point, you've been through enough shit to know that you're stronger together, never split the party, that kind of thing. But, like, the fact that her conscience, having a clean conscience, you know, went out in this moment was kind of interesting.
Yeah. It was an interesting decision for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can kind of respect it though.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't like, wow, that's totally not at all like Cassie. I'm kind of like, well, I can see it. Like, yeah, it's not a great time. Like this hasn't happened before. But like, I could see Cassie being like, I absolutely refuse. If I know that that's how much human life and then Yerk life is going to be lost, I need to take a stand against this.
But, like, what good is it gonna do? Because your friends are still gonna be responsible for that.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
you had an option to, like, stop them or trying to talk them out of it, or, you know, to help aid them in their mission, which is, you know, ultimately going to help kill a bunch of people. But, you know, at this point, it's kind of like you need to help your friends more. I don't know. This is weird. I feel like I wouldn't normally be arguing this. But, like, we're so far in now that I'm just like, do whatever you can to help your friends win this war against the Yeerks. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I feel like I normally wouldn't be arguing. I respect Cassie taking a stand and stepping back. I feel like I should definitely be like, you gotta be gung-ho about doing this shit.
Well,
we've taken weird reversal today.
Yeah. What's going on? Is the moon full? I don't even know.
I don't think so.
Part of me wondered, though, if you were going to get really mad at Cassie about this, because, like, it reminded me of when Eric is like, I'm not going to help you because I would like to be a pacifist. Goodbye. It's just kind of the same thing, maybe?
Okay, here's why I don't think it is. Like, I think that with Eric, that shit is like, oh, I'm gonna have other people do my dirty work and I will have my hands clean because it'll really hurt my brain if I do bad things. With Cassie, she's like, I have done terrible things, but I am drawing the line here. And this is the point where it's too far. And she does argue it. Like, that's her whole food court meltdown thing, is she's saying, like, this is too far. We are killing people, which is something we have said from the start, that we are not going to kill people. And this will do that thing that we have said we would never do. So, like, she's looking at them and saying, you guys are going too far. You're pushing the line past where we all agreed it had to be drawn. And I am taking a stand against it. It may not be effective. It may not stop you. But I am showing you guys how much I disagree by doing this. And I really respect that.
Yeah. I don't see what good it's gonna do. You know?
I mean, but you gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Like with anything. Like, just like our conversations earlier today about Nestle and J.K. Rowling, you gotta start somewhere. Yeah. It's difficult. But, like, I think it's like almost more symbolic than anything else. It's like, I am going to stand up against you guys, and I'm not going to, like, stop you, but I'm not going to contribute to this that I'm so vehemently against.
I guess I would have felt better if she had come along to see them off, but also made one last ditch attempt to be like, guys, please don't do this. You know? Like, the fact that she's just, like, coming along to see them off for, like, seemingly no reason is kind of weird. Like, but at this point also,
like, not that there's any reference to this in the book, but here's a moment where, like, I do my favorite thing and, like, create backstory out of nothing that I imagine happened.
Yes.
I would love to think that Cassie brought this to Jake and continued the argument with him, and she is showing up now, like, completely shut down by Jake. And she's been arguing it with him all night, and, like, this is, like, she's coming along to say goodbye, but she knows there's nothing she could do, so she's just kind of beaten down in this moment.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, because that would be awesome if that was, like, the background narrative of it.
Oh.
And that there's nothing to hint that happened.
But that's, like, a very plausible possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, like, the other thing I really like about that is I love the idea that there seems to be this, like, a closeness between Cassie and Jake, which there should be, because they're dating, right? So they are closer than, you know, Jake with the rest of his team members. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I like the idea that they have moments like that as well, where that closeness allows Cassie to say, like, let's have an open dialogue about this. And I really like the idea of that happening repeatedly in the background that we don't always get insight to, but those conversations are happening and the relationship is, like, building and changing based on that shit.
Oh, they're so mature.
I know, right?
Let's have an open and honest dialogue about our feelings. Like, God, that's every, like, marriage counselor's dream.
Yeah.
To have one of the couples say that.
And that's, I don't know, I just imagine Cassie and Jake being that kind of couple, and then, like, I'll look at Rachel and Tobias, and as much as I love them, I don't imagine them having an open and honest dialogue.
No. Not at all.
No. Man. So good, though.
All right. Let's get to the nasty part of this book.
Let's get to the really good part and then the nasty part of this book, because the next thing that happens, I am 1000% sure happens simply because Axe struggled to open the hatch last night. They go to open the sewer, and Axe puts his tail blade in it and, like, just flips the sewer cap into the air, like, flipping end over end, like, shoo, 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 shoo. And then it goes boom and lands with this huge thud, like, 2 feet from Jake's feet. And Jake just looks at Axe and, like, very dryly goes, "Wow, Axe, you should work for the city." Fucking amazing.
Do you think he was, like, stressing about it, being like, "Oh man, I gotta open that thing again tomorrow. I can't show him that I can't lift it with my weak little kid arms. How can I make this look awesome?"
Like, all night practicing throwing sewer grates throughout the town. Some very confused, like, public works guy the next day was like, "What the fuck is with all these sewer caps?" Oh, so good.
That is so good.
I loved it so much. It was the coolest fucking part. There's so many good parts. So many good Axe and Marco parts in this book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then now it goes shitty, because now we cut to... Well, we don't even cut. Jake just basically says, "Well, Tobias, since you have an infected wound from a squirrel, you get to morph first. Looks like you're going taxing." Which, I know we've talked before about, like, Jake just telling people what to do instead of doing that whole, like, hint, hint, maybe you should volunteer. But, like, I'm not sure I appreciated this moment.
No.
So Tobias, like, flutters down into the sewer, and he lands, and his friends all start, like, calling out support to him. And it's very weird. Like, they're all like, "You can do it, buddy. It's gonna be great." And, like, the only one that I really appreciated was Rachel calls down, like, "I'll be right here. Like,
Aww.
It's okay. I'm here for you." I loved
that. Yes.
There was a lot of cute moments between them.
I just feel like everyone else is kind of coddling him, and I don't appreciate it.
Yeah, and in this moment especially, it was really obvious that everybody else was, like, coddling him a lot, and Rachel was just genuinely like, "I am here for you if you need me." And I appreciated that.
Fuck.
Yeah. I liked it. Okay. So now we get our detailed morph sequence of the book. Doop-a-doop-a-doop, doop-a-doop-doop, detailed morph sequence. Okay. So Tobias starts morphing into this taxon, and as soon as he starts, he didn't even have to concentrate anymore. This morph just took over his body. He melted into this giant gelatinous worm, and everything kind of, like, shrooped and scorped all over the place until this little, like, pincer legs started coming out, and they just, like, pop, 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 pop down his body. And, like, then the eyes all separated, and they're, like, compound eyes within compound eyes. And then he's like, but the taxon brain had never quite formed well enough to understand all of the sight, so it was really fucking trippy. And then the final thing to form was his giant mouth. And, like, there's this moment of, like, just quiet where he's just hit full taxon form. And then the instincts rush and hit him like a freight train. Before he can even think, he's lunging at the sewer cap because he can sense all these people above. He can sense the warmth. He can, like, hear their footfalls vibrating. And then he starts, like, picturing all of his friends, and these digestive enzymes just start, like, secreting out of his mouth because he's expecting to be fed. So gross. And he starts, like, thinking about Marco, and in his mind, he's already, like, eating Marco. And then he starts thinking about Jake and how he's gonna eat Jake, and then, like, he's gonna gnaw through Axe. And then he starts thinking about eating Rachel, and that's when there's this moment of, like, wait, no, don't do that. And then he says, the, like, kid in the back of his mind, the kid Tobias, was just ranting and raving, like, no, don't eat our friends, turn around, we're not gonna do this, and, like, just going nuts. And Tobias somehow was able to back this Taxon body down the tunnel and stop, like, clawing at the sewer grate. And then he aims this Taxon body at the dirt in the side of the cement tunnel because Taylor's people had opened up this section, so it was just dirt. And he just starts eating. Ew. And his friends are like, are you okay down there? They start, like, trying to yell down for him. They start thought speaking to him. But all he can focus on is eating and secreting this dirt.
God. This book got very, like, vor, I kind of feel like. Like, I don't know.
Yes, but also, like, Taxons are very clearly established as the only thing they care about is eating from, like, day one.
Yeah.
So, I can't blame them for going a little bit vor.
Yeah. Vor stuff in here. Anyway. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. All that Tobias can do is eat and poop, and all of the dirt secretes out of his Taxon pores, and it's gooey and disgusting and coating the tunnel in slime, because it's the 90s and everything is slime!
Oh my god, so visceral.
Yeah, I really appreciated this sequence.
Yeah.
It was very good. So, when his time is almost up, Jake starts calling for him and, like, saying, stop, take a break, you gotta demorph, come back. And the only thing that actually gets Tobias's attention and gets him to come back was that he realized, like, oh, there's fresh meat at the other end of this tunnel. So he, like, shoots out of there like he was fired from a cannon and comes back at the team. And he's, like, coming, like, mouth open, ready to eat them. But when he gets there, he sees, like, oh, these aren't humans. They're all in battle morphs. So he sees Axe and he's like, no, he knows Axe could kill him with that tail blade. And there is some sort of, like, sense of alarm in the Taxon. But it's so secondary to the all-consuming hunger that he's, like, willing to ignore it and kind of still, like, inching towards them. And then he becomes aware of Taylor, who's this small, defenseless, easy-to-eat thing in this sea of giant monster battle morphs that could kill him. So he wants to go after her, and he starts to, like, lunge towards her, and she raises a Draken beam at him, and she goes, just try it. I'll fucking fry you. And, she says there's some dialogue back and forth about how she's like, I'm going to shoot you on setting 6, which means he'd just be blown to smithereens. And Axe goes, we agreed that you would shoot nothing above a 3. And Taylor's basically like, tough shit. And this is about the point where Tobias's human anger combines with that Taxon hunger, and he just loses it. Like, he lunges at her. He's gonna fucking eat her and kill her because he wants her dead, and his Taxon wants her dead, and they're in agreement. So, like, hey, fuck it. And then Taylor shoots him as he's lunging at her and paralyzes his whole body. This allowed him to regain some control of the morph and start demorphing. And partway through this demorph, he was already, like, so distracted and frazzled that he's like, oh, fuck, she's gonna see hawk parts coming out and figure it out. So he tries to do the cool thing that, like, Cassie would be able to do, where every time a hawk part comes out, he tries morphing it to Andalite right away. And he's not sure that if any of this is working, but then he realizes, oh, his friends have covered for him. They've kind of backed Taylor away into a corner under the guise of arguing with her about using the wrong setting. And she was really upset because she's like, my Draken beam didn't work. This thing's weak. And Jake privately lets Tobias know, like, hey, Axe messed with this Draken beam so it couldn't fire above the setting 3. And then they're all like, we can't fucking trust her. She just tried to blow you up, to blow you to, like, smithereens. Like, we cannot trust her. And Tobias is like, I don't know. I think we should keep going. And he's like, I have no idea why I'm saying this right now. So that's that exciting scene.
Yay! Also, doesn't he have some sort of, like, inner turmoil about how Taylor's always taunting him about how he trapped himself and he's a loser and shit? But he was kind of like, maybe I did trap myself because my human life was so shitty. And I felt this joy at being a hawk for a permanent amount of time.
That specific instance is a little later in the book.
Damn it! I'm sorry, I keep doing this. My notes are not coordinated.
No, you're totally fine. Because, like, he does say like, it's a running theme throughout the book where he's like, Taylor is taunting me, and like, I have these and these feelings about Taylor. It's just when you said the hawk part specifically, and like, maybe I did trap myself, that's a little later. Not too, like, only a couple chapters from now. So up next, Axe has to go to Taxon. And when he morphs...
Don't do this.
Yeah. Your good boy still has to do this.
No.
So when Axe morphs to Taxon, he goes into hibernation mode, and Tobias is like, why didn't you tell me about hibernation mode? And Axe is like, I didn't know until I was in the morph. Like, I had just heard about it. I didn't know if it would work. So he goes to Taxon, and he's somewhat in control because he's, like, started this hibernation mode that the thing has. And, like, when he's off in the tunnel, all the other members of the team, other than, Axe and Cassie, start having a conversation about, like, what are we doing? Like, what's really going on here? And, like, Rachel and Tobias are the ones that start getting really into it, because Rachel's like, I want to take out Taylor. Like, I think we should kill her. That seems good. And, then she's like, we should definitely fight, but Cassie maybe was kind of right about, like, killing the other people. And, then there's something else about, like, gas and running, knowing what was going to happen and panicking. Rachel's, like, having this, like, weird thing where she can't stop thinking about, like, all the people down there just smelling their doom and, like, running out of there.
Jeez.
Yeah, she's, like, goes to a very, very dark place, and she's like, I know what their last moments are going to be. Cassie's right. We shouldn't do this, but Taylor definitely sucks. And Tobias is like, that's Rachel's whole argument. And Tobias is like, just because their last moments are going to suck, that doesn't change any of this. There's only 6 of us, and who knows how many of them. And then Tobias starts, like, recalling all the stories. Axe starts telling him about all the places that were, like, taken over by the Yeerks. And Tobias is like, we cannot let that fucking happen here. And Rachel's still arguing, like, no, Cassie's right. Like, these humans are gonna have, like, fire and brimstone ending. And Tobias is like, they're just Yeerks. They're all just Yeerks. Like, they need to die. So it's, like, a very weird, like, reversal of roles between the two of them.
Yeah, because usually Rachel's like, no, we have to do this end of story, and Tobias is finding the more kind of nuanced thing. So
yeah,
it's interesting that they kind of switched.
Yeah, and I really appreciated, especially after, like, we've been seeing Rachel kind of, like, spiraling a little bit, maybe, like, becoming a little more, like, bloodthirsty or battle, like, she really wants to battle.
Yeah.
So this was, like, a good moment where she, like, backtracked, and she's like, actually, there's a point, that we shouldn't be blowing up humans. We did say we didn't want to do that, other than Taylor. We should definitely blow Taylor up, but everybody else, maybe not.
Yes.
I do like her commitment to getting rid of Taylor.
Yes. Like,
she's very sure.
I feel like that's very her. If she's, like, torn on something, she, like, focuses her energy on something that she's definite about. And in this case, it's killing Taylor.
I have never quite thought of it that way before, and I really appreciate that.
Yay!
I like that a lot. Like, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to focus on what I do like.
Yeah.
That's excellent. I like that. So then there's this other super fucking creepy, weird ass moment that happens where all the other Animorphs go above ground to demorph, remorph, get away from Taylor so, like, she can't see what's going on. And they leave Tobias alone with her.
Weird.
Who,
what?
like... because they had to, I think.
Yeah.
For the most part. Like, they could have, like, done it in...
shifts.
Rotation, yeah.
Yeah, because I felt like that was weird. It's like you've been, like, kind of coddling and handling him with kid gloves this whole time, but then you leave him alone with his torturer? I don't know.
Yeah.
Weird. Anyway, sorry.
No, because that happens, but so they leave him alone with his torturer, who then saunters up to him and runs her hand through the fur at his withers.
Yeah, she's like being all seducey and shit, and it's not okay.
It's not okay. Like, there's like 30 shades of not okay in this moment. And, like, she starts trying to, like, seduce him, and then she's like, you know, we could rule together.
I'm so uncomfortable.
I am very uncomfortable in this moment.
Oh.
Like, and here's the other thing that, like, made me... This was another moment where I'm like, oh, this is, like, a psychological thing. I was extremely uncomfortable with it. Tobias, less so. He was, like, not receptive to it, but he was, like, okay with it. Ugh, so gross.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
Well, and, like, I was kind of expecting something like this to happen because, like, you know, again, when I brought up that, like, oh, is she, like, the anti-Rachel because, like, she's so, like, beautiful but also so, unforgiving and blah, blah, blah. And, like, throughout the book, like, when Tobias uses descriptors for her, he, like, usually describes her as being very beautiful. So I wondered if she was going to try and, like, use that against him in some sort of way. I don't know.
Yeah.
She's a creep.
I'm wondering, too, if she is strongly if she's strongly suspecting that they're human, because why would she try to seduce an Andalite?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's just her, but, like, I think she suspects that there's something up with these kids.
Yeah. Could be.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tobias doesn't protest as strongly as I'd like. And he instead just goes, you're not fighting for a democracy or something like that. And Taylor goes, democracies need leaders too. So we are going for this democracy, but also democracy with, like, leaders like me, which is a terrible fucking democracy. That's not at all a democracy. You fucked it up, Taylor. You know nothing. Go back to school.
You keep using that word. I don't think you know what it means.
So, the rest of the kids come back. They have all decided to go to Wolfmorph this time.
Whoops.
And because they can pace more.
It's very important for Jake. Pace is how he relieves stress.
Yes. And it was pointed out that as a tiger, he only had 5 paces. As a wolf, he had 7 paces.
Oh, boy.
Which, by the way, is not in my notes. I remember that off the top of my head.
Damn.
So, anyways, they are calling to Axe, who is completely unresponsive. So, like, okay, we gotta go get him. And Tobias is like, okay, I'll go to bat, which, good instinct, man. That's a fucking great idea. The other kids covered him as he demorphed and remorphed into bat, and he took off down this tunnel, calling to Axe, and like, hey man, you're close to the end of your morphing, you gotta demorph, this is gonna be bad. And Tobias found him by going splat right into the back of Axe. And he tells Axe in his most commanding voice, you need to stop and demorph. But Axe in this moment was too weak to do almost anything. He was just kind of like, yeah, he was like gnawing, but like not really moving. And Tobias tells Marco and Jake, who followed him down the tunnel in their battle morphs, like, hey, we gotta get him out of here. He's stuck and he can't move. And so they grab like his like gross gelatinous Taxon body and like pull him out of there with their like wolf teeth. Like they literally dig in and like drag him out of there. And once he's out of like this little tunnel tomb that he's created, he's able to start demorphing. And Axe, of course, screamed when they bit into him and pulled him out of there. And Marco declares Axe is going to die before he starts this morph back because he's so weak. But no, Axe does demorph. He's just exhausted.
Shut up, Marco. You don't know anything.
Yeah, that was a weird moment, too, because there was never even, like, the inkling, like, oh, he might actually die like this. It's always like, oh, he's exhausted and he's going to demorph. But Marco's just like, this is the end. He's going to die. There's nothing any of us can do for him.
I feel like that was just for kind of, like, end of chapter cliffhanger suspense moment.
Yeah, I agree.
But I didn't appreciate it.
Necessarily out of place. I didn't appreciate it at all. It did not leave me in suspense. We all knew he wasn't going to die.
Here's another thing I'm wondering. So, the Taxons are eating and pooping constantly.
Yes.
How is the poop not, like, completely blocking the tunnel they already made?
Yeah, I was, like, wondering that, too. And, like, is it just going into their body to, like, actually sustain them? Like, are they just pulling out from the dirt what they can process and, like, spewing out what they can't?
I mean, I assume they have some sort of crazy high metabolism.
Yeah, oh, for sure. They have to eat constantly.
Yeah, like birds.
But more than birds.
Yes.
Like 1,000 birds.
I don't know. I don't know how much nutritional value dirt has.
Not much, but, like, they mentioned... They talk about that a little bit, how, like, even for Taxon, the dirt doesn't have much nutrition, so... That part of the reason why Axe was so exhausted is because Taxon will eat dirt, but they get, like, because there's not enough nutrients to replace what they're expending to eat the dirt, they'll feel like they're getting full and keep going, and then the exhaustion will hit and they'll die, and they'll actually eat themselves to death. Like, because that's a very, like, clear point they make, and they're saying that's what was happening to Axe, and that's why he was, like, so exhausted.
Baby.
Poor Axe.
I know.
He's not having a good day.
He's not. Except for that cool stunt he did with the, the manhole cover.
That he practiced all night.
It paid off, my boy. It paid off.
Like, I don't know what was better. The fact that Axe did that or the fact that Jake was just like, cool story, bruh. Like, I loved both of those things.
So good.
So good. So anyways, they pull Axe out of the tunnel. Marco says he's gonna die. Tobias screams for Axe, and eventually Axe does start to demorph. He makes it back to Andalite. And they're kind of discussing what just happened, but then they pause because they see a light far off in the tunnel kind of floating towards them. And so they wait while Taylor made her way over to them on her hands and knees in this tunnel that's covered in slime and poop. And so, like, Taylor's covered in slime and poop. And Rachel's kind of, like, squeezing her way through after her as a grizzly bear. And Taylor makes it to them and says, like, what the fuck happened? And Axe is really honest. He goes, oh, I lost control of the morph. And Taylor berates him for a little bit. And, like, Axe just kind of doesn't say anything. And Tobias flies further down this tunnel that Axe has made. And, like, he just starts going to Taxon to continue this project. But, like, it's a really kind of weird moment. Like, Tobias is just like, peace, guys. You keep having this weird argument. I'm gonna go fucking do my thing.
I mean, you know.
I mean, why wait? There's no need. You're not needed for this argument. You can leave. So Tobias was ready this time for the Taxon instincts. He was prepared to deal with it. And then he focuses entirely on the dirt and digging and keeping going. And he does until he hits cement. And that's when he knows he's reached the edge of the Yerk pool. Taylor had said they'd come in high, but Tobias still didn't expect that they would have to go up even a little further, like over the top of this cement wall. But Tobias follows the Taxon instinct and starts digging up. He finally breaks through and looks upon the Yerk pool below him. And all of a sudden, Taylor is up beside him. And he's like, whoa, how did the team not stop you? Like, what the fuck are you doing here? And she goes, oh, I incapacitated them. And then, like, grabs Tobias and, like, whatever her cool arm thing incapacitates him. And he's, like, frozen, staring down at the pool. And he sees some people down there who aren't screaming, but they're also not voluntary. They're, like, this really stoic bunch. And then Taylor starts going on about how, like, my people are professionals. They don't fuck around. Blah, blah, blah. This was the part where I was very drunk, so I'm not sure if they were trying to imply that those stoic people were Taylor's people or not.
Right. I don't know.
But yeah, so Taylor once again offers to Tobias, we could rule together. You could just, you know, become part of my team. Let me take your body and become part of the resistance.
Ew.
Super gross. But in this moment was when Tobias saw that place in the Yerk pool where he hid when he became a Nothlit. It's this craggy rock face that's in front of him, and he remembers clinging to it while the hours just kind of went on, trapping him as a hawk forever. And he's like, I know there's always a choice, maybe only between bad and worse, but there is always a choice. And that's when Tobias starts contemplating if maybe this choice to become a hawk was a cowardly one. Because he knew that his life kind of would be better as a hawk, even though it would take him out of the fight. Because, of course, at the time, he didn't know he'd get his morphing powers back. So, he starts contemplating that, and, like, maybe, like, this was really cowardly to run away from my life and become a hawk and, like, do this, but I can't answer that right now. I only know that I became a Nothlit because of my choices, and I didn't have a good choice. I just had a bad or worse, and I made the decision. And then he takes a moment to tell Taylor, like, hey, you're obsessed with power, and if you ever get it, you're only going to want more. You're never going to be satisfied. And
I will
Taylor
never be
makes
satisfied. Sorry.
Good. I wrote it exactly for that reason.
Perfect.
And Taylor just goes, I'll prove you right, and jabs her artificial hand into Tobias's neck with more paralyzing particles before taking off running down the tunnel. Okay, so Tobias is like, where are you going? And she responds, you'll know soon enough. And Tobias is like, I gotta chase her. So what he does is the coolest fucking leaning into the morph that is done in any recent history of Animorphs, where he just summons all of the Taxon hunger and rage and focuses on the image of Taylor and just, like, eating her. And in it, like, his Taxon body overcomes the paralyzing particle, bends back over itself in an impossible U-turn angle. He powers his legs and, like, scrunches past his own body, and on hunger and rage alone starts powering down this tunnel after her, gaining speed as he, like, overcomes the paralysis more and more. He starts screaming to his team, like, go after her, get her, and they're like, we can't move, we're still paralyzed, and he's like, just try harder, it doesn't last that long. But they are not able to overcome, like, Tobias is, and they call, like, oh god, here she comes, oh, she passed us, like, we can't really move, and Tobias just kind of steamrolls past them right after Taylor while they're still, like, half coming out of it, dragging limbs that are still paralyzed and that sort of stuff. And so he's, like, right on her tail at this point, and she tried to turn and paralyze him, but he saw her lift her arm up, so he kind of, like, slams his body at her, knocks her arm away, she shoots the paralyzing agent into the wall, and takes off running again. Tobias, like, gets the edge of her foot and starts, like, gnawing on her foot, but she's able to, like, kind of pull and slip away from him, and then she stops because she's in sight line of the gas pipes now, and she goes, if you come any closer, I'm blowing this place up. And Tobias is like, you said we'd have 20 minutes to get out of here, and if you blow it up now, you're gonna die with us. And then in the creepiest fucking diabolicalist part of the book ever, that's not a word, most diabolical part of the book ever, Taylor smiles this disgusting yerk smile of pure evil and says, no, I've replaced my skull with pieces of high-impact polymer, one chunk at a time, and this body's gonna burn and die, but the yerk inside my head's gonna survive.
Ew.
And then, like, she shoots the pipe and blows it up. How fucking gross is that?
So gross. She'd just be like a head.
Okay, but not even that. Like, yes, just a head, just a rolling yerk in a tumbling brain, polymer, high-impact skull-shaped container. But also, Taylor had to go under surgery how many times on her face and head to replace parts of her skull piece by piece with this high impact polymer, knowing every single time that surgery was only because her body was going to be destroyed and she was going to die, and the yerk that she had an alliance with, in quotations, was planning on surviving by staying inside of her head polymer shell. Like, imagine that. Like, Taylor had to know, because of what they were doing to her, what the fuck was happening.
But, like, also, when the human dies, I thought it was something about, like, the signals not being sent to the brain anymore that kills the yerks.
I mean, I don't know what they did inside of her head, though. Like, would the brain survive long enough for the yerk to be recovered?
Exactly. That's what I'm wondering. Because, like, the body's destroyed, like, you're dead. Because your heart's not pumping to the blood to the brain anymore. You're fucking dead. So you're just, like, a head with a yerk in it. But I thought, you know, the brain inactivity was what killed the yerk. I don't know.
Like, that's kind of what we've been positing. We don't really know, right? But that was our theory. But, like, if you're protecting the brain inside of this casing, who's to say that there's not something in there that would sustain the brain for, like, even 30 minutes? Like, you know, whatever it would take to, like, okay,
Sure.
find the fucking beheaded polymer skull.
But, like,
Oh,
what
God,
if...
that's so creepy.
Like, what if the head rolls down a different tunnel, and even if you have 30 minutes to get out of it, like, you're stuck. You can't find anything else to infest, and then you just die in the tunnel. This is not a very well thought out plan.
I mean, it's a risk they've got to be willing to take. And honestly, this could totally be a ploy from Visor 3 to be like, yeah, you'll totally live. It's fine. But she's not gonna. Like, there's no way that this would even happen. It's just like you were promised by whatever scientists or Visor 3 or whatever that this is how it would go down.
Yeah, true.
And it also could just be her lying to Tobias to fuck with him.
Yeah.
Like, you can never be sure that you're rid of me because the Taylor body may be gone, but I could live. Like, it could just be totally fucking with him.
Yeah. It's all bad.
It's all bad. But I really like the idea that this was actually a thing that happened and that at some point the alliance between Taylor and that Yerk would have to be broken because he's basically like, I'm gonna destroy your body and churn it up and I'm gonna live.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all fucked up.
Well, because
Okay.
Taylor had that little breakthrough in the cafe.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. Because she was like, don't listen to her.
Oh man, what if Taylor totally had a change of heart and was trying, like, raging like Tom was against his Yerk the whole time, trying to switch sides in those final moments?
Yeah. Oof. Anyway.
Anyways, so Taylor blasts the pipe, she just fucking blasts it, and then goes tumbling down the tunnel laughing the whole time as she, like, just flies away.
God.
So now our good kids are tumbling along and screaming down this tunnel, and they're already running out of air because the gas is just, like, forcing them down towards the Yerk pool. And Tobias is, like, encouraging them, like, okay, hold on, try not to get, like, you know, tumbled out, like, try not to go shooting out into the Yerk pool. But all of his friends are losing consciousness, and they're kind of like, can't breathe, nope, this is bad. And so Tobias is trying to, like, stop them from, like, moving forward with the force of this gas. He's using his little Taxon cone legs to try and, like, wedge them against the sides of the tunnel and stop them. And he's slowing them down, but they're still being pushed through here with the force of all the gases coming out. Then Tobias gets to a smaller tunnel where he's able to dig in more, but his legs are starting to, like, snap off, and he's screaming as, like, he's being drugged down this tunnel. And
This is just like what happened in Spider-Man. When he's trying to stop the train.
I knew exactly what you were talking
Fuck
about.
yeah.
Don't you worry.
Okay.
Yeah. Except his legs are actually coming off and
Right.
falling off. Yay.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Tobias is digging into this tunnel. The tunnel is getting smaller, so he's able to dig in further and further. And he finally squeaks to a stop right as his Taxon face is drawing even with the edge of the tunnel where it opens up into the Yerk pool. And he realizes the Taxon body can actually breathe in this gas. Like, he's doing okay. And so now Tobias is their only hope. So he kind of, like, U-turns over himself again. And as he's doing that, he realizes the walls are still coated with all of this slime from the digging. So Tobias doubles down and does this impossible thing where he turns and starts pushing all of his team members' friends down this tunnel using the slime as some sort of weird pushing lubrication. And it was like percentages at a time, like just a little bit, and then faster and faster. And he's pushing with everything he has. And finally he gets some speed up. But while he's doing this, he's also fighting off his own hunger because he's basically just pushing a bunch of, like, weak, dying animal bodies. And his Taxon body is like, hell yeah, feast! And so he's, like, having to overcome obstacles at every angle. But he resists, and finally he pushes them back into the cement sewer tank where they started.
Yay, Tobias, you're a badass.
Such a badass! So when they get there, they realize the gas is somehow turned off. And they start coming around now that everybody's breathing oxygen, and Jake is the one that starts gasping out, how? How is the gas turned off? They don't really know. So they demorph. They mostly went back to battle morphs. Tobias just flew up as himself, got an aerial view, and he realized that there's something wrong at the pumping station itself. It's like, he says it like it's like when you can tell that something terrible is about to happen because it's too quiet, or something terrible has happened because things are just like wrong even though nothing's moving. And he sees that there's this broken door with glass everywhere outside of the station. So they go over there. Tobias lands, goes to Andalite so that he's useful in a fight inside. And they file into this station. And all around them are human workers in uniforms passed out. And, like, I think at first they thought it was a bunch of dead bodies. But then they realized, like, no, they're just unconscious from the gas thing. And then they see all of the yerks that were in these workers, like, wriggling on the floor outside of their host bodies. Just horrifying.
What? How?
I think they thought they were going to die from the gas. So they just, like, abandoned their host bodies.
Oh.
There's a door open towards the back of the pumping station, so Tobias walks through, and he sees Cassie back there, and he finds her next to the big, like, gas pipe, I imagine, large, rounded wheel, where she's turned it off and saved them all, and Cassie is curled up in a ball crying. And Tobias goes in there and tries to, like, get her up, but he can't really do much with his really weak Andalite arms. And
Sorry.
I know. It's brought up so many times. And in the distance, he can hear sirens. So he's like telling her, we need to go. And he says, it's okay. It'll be okay. And Cassie goes, no, it will never be okay.
Oh.
Cut.
Damn.
I know. Poor Cassie.
No.
So here's the point where we get the entire plan. So the next day, Tobias and Rachel are flying free, enjoying some serious thermals. And after riding them peacefully for a while, Rachel says, hey, do you want to head towards the beach? And Tobias is like, yeah, let's do it. So they take off, and they find this high, craggy part of the beach where nobody's really around because it's hard to get there. And Rachel demorphs, Tobias morphs to his human body, and they start talking about the previous evening. And Tobias says, did Cassie come over and tell you what happened? And Rachel goes, yeah. So Cassie went to warn Mr. Tidwell that this whole thing was going down, and he told Cassie that the peace movement all fed at the same time so that they could pass information and discuss what was going on. And Taylor, it turns out, was working with Visor 3, and she was pretending to go against Visor 3 so she could make an attempt to kill the Animorphs and the Yeerk peace movement all in one fell swoop. So the plan that they were following was that they were going to go to the Yeerk pool at the time when the peace resistance was all feeding together, and Taylor was going to facilitate the blowing up of both the pool and the Animorphs breaking into the pool, thinking that they were going to be helping this faction. And there was a third part of this plan where, because Taylor was pretending to be part of this resistance, that they were going to pin the whole thing on the peace movement and say, look at these terroristic attacks, and try to get some Yeerks that had maybe been thinking about becoming dissenters to come back to the Empire. But the plan totally failed, just barely, but it did fail, because none of this went down, and Tobias started beating himself up, saying, like, I can't believe I didn't listen to my gut, I can't believe I just went ahead with this and defended Taylor, I don't know what I was thinking. And Rachel just says, well, I'd do it all again, the same way. And he's like, what the fuck? And she's like, just because you made the wrong decision doesn't mean that the actions didn't lead to opening new doors that wouldn't have been opened if we just sat around not doing anything. It was all for the best in the end. We had an opportunity that we never would have had. We found out more information. It turned out pretty well for us, actually, even though it was the wrong decision. And Tobias goes, oh, really? Having Cassie fight off all those human controllers alone was for the best? And Rachel's like, well, maybe not that part, but it was the lesser of two evils. And then at that moment, a twig blew across the ground in front of them. They both reached for it, and they ended up holding hands.
Cute!
That's the end of this book.
Cute!
It's pretty cute. I mean, I think this was a pretty strong book. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. The Taxon stuff was, like, super good. It was very visceral and very, like, we got a little bit of Taxon stuff in Andalite Chronicles, was it?
Yeah, we did when they morphed in the
with LeBron.
With LeBron James and the Hive. Yeah.
But like this was some new Taxon stuff, and it was very like enlightening. And what I thought was really cool was that early on in the book, Tobias kept like talking about like, oh, you know, being a hawk means like you're hungry and you have to catch your own food and you're always aware of how hungry you are. And that came back into play when he was a Taxon. He's like, oh, I understand like this like primal need to eat for the Taxons, because like I feel this as a hawk sometimes. And that was just really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. I appreciated both that and the fact that the Taxon, instead of just being like they have no sympathy for the Taxon at all. Like it even like, you know, the hork-bajir, like, you know, they're peaceful, blah blah blah. The Taxon, they have always hated them, have never had any sympathy. And in this book, like, Tobias starts talking in a way where it's almost like, well, they have rage, like there's more to them. They're starting to hint that like maybe they're not just this thing.
Although at one point he described like what they do when they're, I think it's when they're hibernating, they all just like sleep on top of each other like a pile of mating snakes, and then if they're hungry they just eat each other, which was really horrifying. But apart from that, yes.
Oh man, there's like, I mean, I'm not saying that they're redeemed in any way. No. They are disgusting, horrifying beasts, but there's more to them than just that disgusting beastness.
Yeah. I don't know. Overall, it's good stuff. I liked Axe a lot in this book.
I loved Axe in this book. I loved Marco in this book. I appreciated Cassie a lot in this book. I guess this is character ratings that I'm doing. Do you want to get into character ratings? Da 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 da.
We have a theme song.
We have a theme song that we just made just now for this. Okay, how do we feel about Jake?
He paced a lot.
Yes, he did do that.
I don't know. 4, I guess. Wasn't a star player, but he was still good.
Okay. I'm giving him a 5.
Whoa!
And let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because I thought he did make some, like, very... He wasn't there all the time, for sure. Because that's Jake, right? He's very soft-spoken in these books unless he's making a decision. And then he's very, like, mysterious and leaderly. But, like, he did make some leader-like decisions. It felt like a kind of background of him looking out for Tobias, and maybe not always successfully, but it was there. Mm-hmm. Then there was the scene where Axe flipped the sewer at him, and he very dryly said, "Wow, Axe, why don't you go work for the city?" And for that line alone, I laughed out loud and wanted to give him a 5.
Okay, fair.
So that's my argument.
Okay.
For that. Okay, what about Rachel?
Well, she was amazing, per usual. She was a badass, and she was also very loving towards Tobias, and she also showed kind of a morally complex part of her, which I appreciated. Mm-hmm. So, I'll give her a 5.
I mean, obviously I'm giving her 5, but I really mean it this time. So, let it be known.
A 5 with an extra star.
Yes. It's a super 5 is what I'm giving her. And it for all the same reasons that you just said. Like, she was really... a lot happened with her in this book. And it was actually, like, a book where finally we see Rachel and Tobias interactions, and it seems like they're actually interactions and not just, like, a very kind of strange thing that the author put in here because they're allegedly dating.
Allegedly.
But no, I liked all of her her decisions, her interactions. I liked that she took the time to say, like, Cassie's right. She has a very good point, but then still focus on, like, but Taylor does need to die.
Right.
But
it wasn't completely out of character.
Right. And it wasn't a complete, like, you know, oh no, Cassie, for sure, we should definitely not do this, blah, blah, blah. It was more like she has a very good point, and I'm considering it, and I think she's right about some things, but, like, I have my own things going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved that.
I loved that so much. And then I really loved the very mature discussion they had at the end, because I feel like after Tobias's torture book, they shared that kiss, I believe, was at the end of that book.
Cute.
But it was adorable. I loved it, but there was no preamble to it of her actually saying things that, like, would be supportive and helpful for somebody who's just been through a super traumatic event.
Yeah.
But in this one, she was, like, talking it through with him in, like, a really respectful, mature way to help him actually, like, process what had just happened. And I liked that a lot. Yeah.
Aww.
Okay. Those are all my thoughts on Rachel. And how much I love her.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, let's talk about Cassie.
Quintessential Cassie, the morally correct one. Or the morally... I don't know. Words are starting to fail me at this point in the podcast.
We have reached the point where the words are hard.
Yeah. The thinking is hard. No, I thought Cassie was great in this book. I thought she was very, like, true to her character. Part of me was like, why did you let your friends do this? But then she came back in the end and, like, actually helped out a lot, and through, you know, obviously great emotional sacrifice. So yeah. I am all about that.
Yeah.
I would give her 5.
I'm gonna, again, I'm doing a 5, and for all the reasons, I agree with you. And I'll just add that, like, she had her own, like, book 19 adventure part 2 on her own, and we didn't even get to, like, read that. Like, she went and saw Mr. Tidwell,
right. Yeah.
connected with them, like, figured out the movement, made the decision to come and save her friends, fought her way into the station, turned off the gas. Like, this was like, oh man, this was one of the things that we always talk about, how we love so much that, like, just because you're in one character's head doesn't mean the world stops and you're only focusing on them. And this was such a good example of that.
For sure.
Oh, it was so good. I can just imagine her inner turmoil. And of course the other book that we made up in our own heads about her convincing Jake all night that he should not do this mission, and him deciding that they had to.
What morph did she use, though, to incapacitate the controllers?
I gotta imagine wolf, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering how you unconscious somebody as a wolf.
Maybe hork-bajir.
Maybe. Water buffalo!
Water buffalo!
Boom! Knock
or African Cape buffalo. Was it Cape buffalo?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. I got the wrong buffalo.
A giant Buffaman. Miss him. I miss the Buffaman.
R.I.P. Buffaman.
Yeah. Oh, man. And the scene where Tobias walks in and finds Cassie crying is really intense.
Oh. Especially because they haven't had a lot of, like, one-on-one character interaction, I think.
Yeah, and, like, their whole spiel when they do is, like, those moral quandaries. So, like, having that moment where it was like a moral quandary, and then Tobias trying to comfort her and her just saying, like, nothing's okay. Nothing will ever be okay. Like,
I'm not okay.
You wear me out.
Not about that. Marco!
Dear Marco.
I don't even know. Like, not a big player in this book, but such good lines.
Everything he said was gold in this book.
I know. Okay, I'll just give him a 5.
I'm giving him a 5 too. Everything he said was gold. Though, like, I could hear the aggravating teenage boy when he was going, Axeman, go to the James Bond site. It's really important. Google James Bond. Like, it's very important. Oh, fuck yeah. Not much in this book, but every line worth it.
For sure. And nothing super gross.
Nothing super gross at all. Just pure excitement about James Bond.
And getting a B in gym.
B minus.
Oh yes, that's even worse.
How do we feel about Axe?
Well, of course I'm going to give him a 5.
Of course. I too am giving him a 5. He was in this book a lot, which is excellent because he and Tobias are besties.
They are!
They are, and I appreciate them so much, and he was so good.
And they were both Andalites together for, like, a very large portion of the book.
Yeah.
Which we haven't seen since, I think, Tobias got his Andalite morph.
Yeah, for
Maybe.
sure.
Yeah.
No, that's accurate. I am remembering.
This is what I want.
This is exactly what you wanted.
Andalite
That's,
adventures with your
Yeah.
Uncle Axe. That's still weird to me.
Best friend and Uncle Axe. Doing stuff together forever. Andalites around.
My best friend is my uncle.
Doing tailblade stuff, being shorms together forever.
And sharps together.
Doing the
Sharps
rituals
forever.
in the morning.
Oh my god. This is all I want.
That's why I thought you'd be, like, so pumped about this book, because it's got moral quandaries, it's got Cassie being, like, a badass, but also with morals, it's got Axe and Tobias doing Shorm stuff together as Andalites. I was like, this book has everything Kaycie said she wanted.
I hate Taylor.
That's
Like,
fair. Taylor's the fucking worst.
God, just... I don't know. There's something about Taylor that I just... Like, of course she tortured our baby boy Tobias, which is terrible.
That is
But,
fucking
like,
awful.
I don't know. Like, I think she's a good villain, although I don't quite... I don't know. Oh, I'm the only one who... I didn't give Jake a 5. And he's the only one.
Well, we still have to rate Tobias.
Well, he's gonna have 5, obviously.
Okay.
'Cause he's a wonderful boy who's been through a
yeah.
lot. And he kicked ass and saved all his friends with amazing powers. And the poor thing still thinks he's weak. And I'm just like, boy, if you were weak, Rachel wouldn't like you.
Like, oh my god.
Mic drop.
Like, I can't believe he thinks he's weak in any way. And I realize that, like, part of this is supposed to be from the torture, and part of it's from his upbringing where he was constantly told, you're worthless, you aren't worth my time. And not just told that, but shown that with being shuttled back and forth with people who didn't give a shit about him, abandoned by his parents. Everything has set him up to be like, I am awful. And even, like, now hunting, when, like, every time he, like, catches his breakfast, he thinks in his head of Taylor telling him he's a pathetic little bird and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But then, like, he will turn around and have these amazing feats of strength, like when he overcame the paralysis with, like, just using his wits and the Taxon's hunger and rage, and, like, the ability to, like, resist not only the everything going on in the tunnel with the gas pushing him out and all of that with his strength, but also from, like, eating the pile of meat in front of him in a beast whose main state of being is just insane hunger to the point where they can't control themselves. Like, he is so fucking strong. Like, mentally, the fortitude is just insane. And, like, it kills me and hurts me that he thinks that he is weak, because he's so far opposite of that. And I am just so fucking happy that Rachel is there and recognizes that in him, even though he doesn't. And, like, that's one of the things that I think really, like, why I love Rachel and Tobias together, because he is, like, he thinks he's weak and admires Rachel so much for being strong because she's, like, physically and strong and has confidence and everything. And Rachel admires so much that he is so mentally strong. And, like, it's the two different aspects of it, like, that are, like, the halves of each other that they appreciate. And, like, I just love that whole connection and interaction and the way that that plays out. It's just so awesome to see. So, anyways, that's my dissertation. You can read the other 40 pages.
Oh my god.
On the Facebook group, where I will be posting this later. MLA
Perfect.
formatted. We're excited. Don't worry about it.
Good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, the reference points are all me and my brain. Oh. Anyways, no, like, I love it so much. And books like, we get so few Tobias and Axe books that, like, everyone is a treasure. And I just appreciate this book so much for showing that. And I think I know exactly what you mean with, like, one of the reasons it's not, like, immediately a favorite book is because the lows are so low that it's hard to say, like, I love this, because then you have to acknowledge, like, a lot of the torture and the dark shit and the gore that is just hard to process with all of the highs of this book.
Yeah, and so what I'm discovering just reading through this entire series is that sometimes my favorite books I don't immediately recognize as my favorite books. Like, since we're now, like, in the mid-40s, like, the books that are my favorites are the ones that, like, I harken back to and I remember, stand out. Like,
yeah.
Like, I would say, like, book 4 is up there because, like, that's when we found Axe, and I, like, remember everything about that book. And, like,
yeah.
I think this one will end up being pretty high, but it's kind of hard to recognize it in the moment. Although it's, again, compared to the last 2 books that we've had,
oh my
it's
god, the
like,
lowest of lows.
It's like not even in the same league, yeah. I feel like we're back on track. Like, we took a weird side branch and it was a terrible thing, and we decided that no, we don't want to live here, and we got back on track.
Oh, thank god. Yeah, but man, did I enjoy this book. Like, and I remembered enjoying, I think I said last week, like, I can't specifically recall what it was about because this is one of the last ones I ever read. But, like, I did remember enjoying it a lot, and now I can really see why I did, even if I didn't, like, focus intently on, like, different aspects of the story, because, like, at its core, it's pretty simple, right? Like, it's a single plan. They do the plan, it goes awry. That's the book. But, like, there's so much to it that I enjoyed it a lot. All right. Well, if you want to email us your brainbusters, you can do that at anonymousanimorphs@gmail.com. You can go onto our Facebook group, which is Animorphs Anonymous, or our super cool, super secret subgroup called the Andalite Bandalites, which is facebook.com/group/Animorphs Anonymous. You can tweet at us at Animorphs Anon, and you can also check out my terrible images on Instaslam, where I sometimes put the best jokes I can think of when I'm posting episodes to really give you a high-low with the joke to image ratio, and that's at Animorphs Anonymous.
Dear God. You can find Animorphs Anonymous. That's our podcast that you just listened to. Congratulations. Good for you. You can find us on other podcast hosting sites such as Spotify, Podcast Republic, Stitcher, Podbean, dear God, Google Play. I'm so sorry.
Except maybe not Google Play. We've been having apparently issues with them. I have a ticket open. It's a whole thing.
Well, shit. Don't go to Google Play. Just
fuck Google.
Just use Spotify, you guys. Everyone uses Spotify.
Yeah, we're on Spotify.
Yeah, just...
I use Stitcher, but everybody else uses Spotify. Oh, man. Tell me about your comic, please.
I have a comic. It is now updating again after my long hiatus. It is called B-Side You. You can find it at bsideyoucomic.com. Please go read it. I work really hard on it.
And it's very, very good.
Thank you.
I don't have a comic, but occasionally I am a third podcast person on Cadmus to Crisis, a Superboy podcast. And I don't know if they're still publishing episodes that I'm on or if they're past that point, because I am a terrible third podcast host that shouldn't talk about Superboy ever. Shit. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, they do a podcast about it.
Hooray!
So, yay!
We did it.
We did it. And I just have one final request before we end this podcast.
Uh-oh.
Please, listeners, if you've ever thought that you enjoy me as a person and want to make me happy, please post in the Andalite Bandalite group your list of threatening foods. It would bring me so much joy if you would do that. I haven't laughed that hard at something so ridiculous in a long time, and I really appreciated that.
Oh.
All right,
Shit.
that's it.
Challenge
I'm out.
accepted.
Good.
All right. Fairly
Let me
well.
just-
Till next time, everyone.
I'm just dropping this on you. Devil's food cake. I'm out.
Oh, yeah. Goodbye.